Hey, thanks for clicking. My name is Sam Strauss and this is my YouTube channel. So in this video, I'll be asking 6 different admission officers 5 of the most commonly asked questions. An admission officer is the person who reads a college application and decides whether an applicant is admitted, rejected, deferred, or waitlisted. I'm about to explain why I made this video. If you don't want to hear that, skip to that time, and you can just get right into the interviews. But if you want to hear why I made it, just hang tight. It'll only take like 60 seconds. In the spring of my junior year, I would go on YouTube to look for college resources, as I think a lot of high schoolers do. And although there were great resources for testing, and that was about it actually. There were great resources for testing, but I didn't find a lot of advice when it came to the overall process itself. My search results were crowded with students making reaction videos and from private companies who help students apply to colleges. And sure, the private companies I'm sure have great things to say and can help, and I loved watching kids my age get into their dream schools and their parent or guardian and them crying together. Like, that's great, but it didn't exactly help me with my college process, well, at all. So I wanted to create a video that would actually have admission officers' voices and answering questions that I know I was wondering 12 months ago. So in this video, that's what I try to accomplish. What makes an application stand? I don't know why I'm doing that with my fingers. What makes an application stand out? What is the biggest mistake someone can make on their application? What is the most common mistake made on applications? Which extracurricular activities carry the most weight in the college admission process? Which part of the college application matters most? Yeah. So without farther ado, here are their responses. And they introduce themselves at first and which university they work for.
Everyone, my name is Mark Butt. I'm the Director of Undergraduate Selection at Emory University in Atlanta.
My name is Ashley Brookshire. I'm the Regional Director of Admissions for the West Coast for Georgia Tech.
Hi, my name is Maya Scheidel, and I'm an Assistant Director of Admissions at the University of Chicago.
Hi everyone, my name is Emily Carmichael. I currently work for the University of Oregon.
My name is Elena Wong. I'm the West Coast Director of Admission for Drew University.
My name is Laura Stratton and I'm the Director of Admission at Scripps College.
This is going to be my 8th cycle as an admission officer at Emory. I've done some high school guidance counseling, and then I also worked for 5 years at Johns Hopkins in Baltimore.
This is crazy enough, my 13th year in admissions. Before that, I worked for my alma mater, Wheaton College in Norton, Massachusetts. And I have been at Drew for the past 8 years.
I'm a tech alumna. I graduated back in 2010 and have actually been serving in the admission office since that time. So over my kind of decade of experience with the Institute, definitely very familiar with the competitive admission process, especially with schools that are as kind of STEM focused as we at Georgia Tech are.
I have worked in admissions now for about 10 years. I started at a small private school, which was my alma mater, kind of fell into admissions as most people do. Then from there, I worked for another large public school, and now I've been with the University of Oregon for about 4 years now, and I really love it.
I have worked at Scripps in admission for about 14 years. Prior to that, I worked at a few other small private colleges in admission.
It's a good question.
Being authentic and genuine.
When students are intentional with not just the filling out of the application, but with how you've seen them engage with the world around them.
I think one thing is just a student who has done their research really understands the institution that they're looking for and sees that this school is the right one for them.
One thing that admission officers really look for in an application is that the authentic voice of the student comes out.
2 things I think make an application stand out are going to be the ability to handle really challenging academic work, I think, is sort of the foundation of the application. But then I think what comes through really strongly for a lot of students is just a strong, cohesive narrative that comes from not just the student, but from, the 2 teacher recommendations, a school counselor, sort of like a thematic narrative.
All of those pieces of the application are important. We as admissions counselors are looking at all of those things that students are submitting to help paint a bigger picture of who you are as a student and as a potential member of our community.
When we're reading applications, we're really trying to make sure that you're going to be a good fit for us, but we're going to be a good fit for you. So getting to know that student and understanding what they're interested in and what they're passionate about is huge, right? Because again, that idea of fit plays a very large role.
We talk about fit in admissions and just knowing that the school is the right fit for them and showing that in their application. Yes, I've done my research. I know this is a good school for me and this is why I want to be there.
When we're reading an application and we can really hear that student's passion and voice come through and the things that they're involved in or what they write about, the classes where they've challenged themselves, that's the most invigorating type of application. And the one where we can actually start to ascertain if there's a strong match between the student and what we can offer.
And when you're looking at a transcript where a student has intentionally picked the right types of courses that fit their rigor needs and their academic interests, and they've intentionally put in the work to earn strong grades, when they've been engaged outside the classroom in things that are meaningful to them, not just to have a long resume, but to have a meaningful resume.
A lot of it's about being a fit for the institution and what that school is looking for, but just having a really clear understanding of who the student is, how they spend their time, what do they care about.
What really makes them tick? What gives them that drive? What catches their interests and kind of prompts them to move forward and engage with the world meaningfully?
What values do they bring to the community? Those things I think are really important and can make a student stand out for good and for bad, right? Like standing out isn't always a good thing. Sometimes, you read really memorable applications and you're like, okay, this student, I have a very clear understanding of who the student is and they're not a good fit. So. Yeah, so this is an interesting question. So I was thinking about this.
Well, one mistake that students can make is by letting too many people look it over. We still want it to sound like it is a high school student.
Over-editing an essay can also sometimes make it no longer sound like you.
The biggest mistake, and kind of even moving ahead, the most common mistakes that I see are related to the amount of time a student spends on the application.
When you're not being true to who you are, right? When you're writing what you think we want to read, no, we're admission officers. We're looking to admit you, so we have to get to know who you are.
One, it's kind of a funny one that we see pretty frequently is writing in the essay, I can't wait to go to the rival school. So if you want to go to the University of Oregon, and then from there you're writing that you can't wait to be, somebody else's mascot at somebody else's school, that one is one that definitely stands out to us.
It's probably leaving things blank that are required, right? So, which would include like not ever completing your application, which means it doesn't get read, and sort of not following up and checking your portal, being like, oh, like all of these things are getting there. I think there's some students who just for whatever reason, once they click submit, they think that the process just happens automatically, where it's really good to develop a routine of follow-up.
You need time to meaningfully search for colleges that are going to be the right fit for you, places that are going to help nurture you and help you grow and give you opportunities to explore interests on their campus. When you don't give yourself enough time to actually fill out the application, that definitely reads on our side. It's way easier to submit typos, to have the wrong university's name in your supplemental essay.
Make sure that in your essay especially that you're not writing only about somebody who has influenced you without bringing it back to yourself and how that has impacted you.
I think if students are ever in a situation where what they're saying in their application doesn't align with what other information we have on the student from the school, then that can be a little bit of a problem in the sense that we may have to follow up with the school. And then if it turns out that the student is telling us things that actually never happened, then that's probably a pretty big mistake.
So at Georgia Tech, right around 70% of our applicants each year apply in that 72-hour window before our deadline. So every year, like clockwork, we know that if their deadline is on October 15th, then starting the morning of October 13th, we're going to begin receiving tens of thousands of applications. And when those application submissions increase like that, last-minute questions arise as well. So we are flooded with emails and phone calls and walk-in visitors, whether they are the applicant themselves or their parents or a school counselor. And though we're trying to respond as quickly and in timely manner as we possibly can, we can't get to everybody quickly enough to reduce that anxiety. Whereas if you have a question about our application process and you're trying to apply a week ahead of that deadline, when you reach out to us, you're going to get an almost immediate response. And so just giving yourself enough time and kind of structuring your plan for applying appropriately, I think is so important, not just for what we see on the application side, but for the amount of stress that it causes on the student side.
There are different types of mistakes that can be made on applications, and students should never worry that any one thing is going to move them straight into the no pile. We understand that you're humans in this process, and if you misspell a word or don't capitalize one thing, that's not something that we are going to automatically move you into the deny group. But if there is a pattern of mistakes, or there is a pattern of just lack of attention to detail, that can be a problem.
I'd say the biggest one is mostly not proofreading. I think that this can be applied to both the essay as well as any other part of the application. So I know sometimes students will spend a lot of time writing their essay and then really quickly run through their extracurriculars. And we're going to see that too. And so we want to see that you've had not only your eyes on every piece of the application, but also on the rest of it as well. So you and have a second reader or maybe a third just read through the application to proofread for you.
One of the biggest things that I oftentimes see with applications is that a student has not proofread their essays carefully. So this could either mean that a student hasn't checked for grammar, or there might be slight spelling mistakes, or it could mean that a student has submitted the wrong essay for the wrong college. Maybe you're writing an essay about, college X, but you accidentally submit it to UChicago. We're going to see that essay. So these are some things that can be very easily avoided just by taking some extra time to proofread, to double check that you are submitting the proper essay to the proper school.
I would still say it's that time piece. And I think what makes it most common is the fact that we do have those numbers to back up just how many students are waiting to apply until those last few days before the deadline. And that's not a Georgia Tech phenomenon. That is happening at colleges across the country. And so a really great way to reduce that stress in an already stressful process is to just go ahead and make sure that you're setting those internal deadlines a bit earlier, and let your friends be the ones that are queued up waiting to get their last minute questions answered. You can be ahead of the game and go ahead and get that knocked out.
I don't know if there's one most common mistake. I think I think especially with an essay, it's very hard for students to talk about yourself, right? We're asking you to write an essay that you've never written before, right? We're spending time on the essay and making sure that it's a really reflective piece of who you are. I think that's key.
The other thing is when you're thinking about writing and extracurricular activities, solely focusing on one thing. So I think of the student who is an athlete, and they write their personal essay about the big game. And then they write their supplemental essays about being named captain of the team. And then all of their recommendations are talking about what a great athlete they are. I mean, that's fine. Like, I, as an admission officer, learn that they're an athlete, but we want to admit a whole person. And so for students to think about how to more well-roundedly answer the questions and make sure they're telling different things does avoid that trap of sometimes being perceived as a one-dimensional applicant. We know you're not a one-dimensional person, but sometimes you can be perceived as a one-dimensional applicant.
Yeah, I would say, ultimately, some of the more common mistakes that I think students perceive to be mistakes, for us, they're really not mistakes because we're just trying to understand who the student is. So I think there's a common misunderstanding that students say, oh, I want to go to school X, but you accidentally submit that application to the wrong school, that's like, oh my gosh, that student's definitely not getting in. And that's not necessarily the case. I mean, yeah, it's something you probably shouldn't do, but I think most admission officers still enter the process wanting you to be your best. So.
There is no right answer for that.
A great question. So I especially right now with everything going on, that's a big question that we're getting. And I think what's so important about extracurricular activities is it doesn't have to have a full label or title to be an extracurricular activity that you're so invested in. If you love doing art and you love painting, that's a great extracurricular activity. And students, we know that you have very limited time outside of the classroom, right? We know that you are so busy, you have so much going on. So when we're looking at your extracurricular activities, we're trying to get a sense of what you like to do with your spare time.
I get this question a lot. What should I be doing? What's going to make me stand out as a student? How should I be spending my time? And really, there are nearly an infinite number of ways that students can be engaged beyond the classroom, whether it's through a club at their high school or a sport, whether it's community service, a community organization, something that they're doing on their own, like a hobby.
I always just tell a student that they should get involved in whatever it is that they're passionate in. So what is it that you're excited about? If that is student government, if you're really excited about Girl Scouts or Boy Scouts, or if you're into athletics or volunteer work, that's great. You show us whatever it is that you're really into.
What is most important is how you can articulate it. How can you talk to us about the things that really get you going and provide that level of passion and interest that you're going to bring to our community? Because that's what we're really trying to figure out. Can we provide the things that you want in a college experience, and what are you going to give back to our community? And in that, making sure that you avoid things like using, if you have acronyms at your school, for certain clubs or even positions, that's a common mistake that students will make, and they assume, well, we're going to know what that is. And students can easily avoid that by thinking, well, what if my grandma read this application, or my little sister? Would she know what those words meant together? And then making sure that you explain them.
When we're looking at that in the admission process, we're not checking boxes saying, okay, yes, they've got their club and their sport and their volunteer work. We want to see, again, that intentionality piece, that impact. Have you been engaged in something long enough to feel like you've had impact? Are you helping that organization move forward, or are you just a part of it because you want the cord at graduation because you think it would look really nice on your stole, right?
There's not one particular thing that is like a magic bullet that's like, oh, this is something that's gonna, really wow the admissions committee. What we're really looking for is excellence, right? So whether that's in music or volunteerism or leadership or business or any of those areas, we're really looking for students who are demonstrating some level of excellence. But I also think behind that, we're really trying to understand what motivates the student to spend their time in that way.
At the end of the day, we want to see that you are involved in something, that you're passionate about something. But it is very contextual, and you do not need to be involved in every single club to get into college.
Tech uses a holistic review process.
A big one for us, I always say, is our curriculum.
I would say the academic transcript by far.
So the transcript in your curriculum, that's the first thing that we're going to look at.
Definitely, it's going to be your high school transcript.
The holistic review process.
Really hard to get through the admission process with all the admission officers looking at your file without a really strong transcript. That's sort of like the foundation of your house.
But we're also looking at trends over time. So did you start out really strong and every year your grades went down a little bit? So understanding that, or do you have an upward trend where you started out a little rocky, but every year your grades improved? So we're looking at you, but we're also looking at you within the context of your high school.
Students who are taking a challenging curriculum in the context of their school.
You are choosing to apply to a college that has a focus on learning. And while you're going to be a community member and you're going to be involved and engaged, what matters first and foremost is that you can succeed in the classroom and that you will take advantage of the academic opportunities that are offered there. It's not only your grades, right? So I know sometimes high school students or parents will be like, what's the GPA we need to get in? And that is not important. But instead, we can see what are the types of classes that are offered at your school. Where have you shined? Where have you challenged yourself? And are those a good match for what we can offer at my particular school?
Holistic really means that all of those pieces of the application are important. We as admissions counselors are looking at all of those things that students are submitting to help paint a bigger picture of who you are as a student and as a potential member of our community.
That means we truly are reading the entire file. We actually have two individuals reading your file at the same time. I'll be part of that review, and I'll be there looking at their transcript, their school profile, those letters of recommendations, right? The pieces that really are kind of tied geographically to understanding that student, because not all high schools use the same grading system. They don't offer the same types of courses. So it's really important to have that contextual review, especially as we're looking at the academic pieces of the application. But then we also absolutely are looking at your involvement and your personal statements, whether that's the main personal statement or the supplemental question. And so another reviewer is reading those pieces. And then we're having a conversation where all of that information is merging at the same time.
So for us, curriculum is really a big part, and that's really what we're looking at first and foremost. We're also looking at, of course, GPA test scores, but we go through the application with a holistic review approach. So we're going to look at every part of the application, including grade trend. We're looking at all of those other pieces in the application. Letter of recommendations optional, but we'll look at it if it's included. So that all matters to us. But the big thing I would say is curriculum would be first and foremost.
Thank you so much for watching. I hope you found this video to be helpful. I just wanted to acknowledge the fact that these 5 questions will likely not answer all of the college questions you have. I am still in contact with these 6 admission officers, and I've asked all of them if they would be interested in answering some more questions. All 6 of them said they'd be happy to be a part of it, which I was thrilled to hear. So if you have more questions, let me know in the comments down below. If enough people are interested, I'll make a part 2. And yeah, lastly, I just wanted to say thank you so much to everyone who was involved. There were 3 faculty members at my school: Melissa Palmer, Stephanie Perez, and Fu Tranchi. Those 3 individuals helped me out a lot with this project, from helping with putting me in contact with these college admission officers and figuring out what questions to ask them and how to go about emailing them. Obviously, this video would not have been possible without Elena, Mark, Ashley, Laura, Emily, and Maya. And a big thank you to them for taking time out of their day to meet with me and answer these questions so that I could create this video. I would really appreciate it if you would like and subscribe. And again, let me know in the comments below what questions you want me to ask them if I make a follow-up. And yeah, thank you again for watching, and stay safe.